Hello and welcome. Today I have a book review for you. It is the New York Times bestseller, The Yellow House by Sarah M. Broom. Today's show is sponsored by the Your Family Story system, everything you need to know to record a loved one's life story. And I'll have more details about this and some free sections coming up at the end. But firstly, a big thank you if you're following, subscribing and liking the show. Refer it to a friend because really welcome new people to the show, because Forever Young Autobiographies is all about learning how to write life stories for family and friends so that unique memories will live on. So today's book review is the last in this year's series by Forever Young Autobiographies, and what a way to finish it off. The Yellow House came out 2019 by Grove Press, and it tells the story of many people, many families, but one house in New Orleans East from about the 1960s until being hit by Hurricane Katrina. So it's won a lot of attention. Most notably, it has won the National Book Awards 2019 Award for Nonfiction. Also, as I mentioned, it's been a New York Times bestseller, and Barack Obama also nominated it for his 2019 Fave Book list. So some amazing accolades, and today's show is just a little bit about what this book is all about, his memoir, some interesting points that I found and some takeaways that we can use as life story writers, whether we're writing an autobiography, memoir, biography or other life story project. And you could be planning to write this, you could be writing, editing and even publishing a life story. So let's kick it off with a little bit about what this memoir is all about. As I mentioned, it came out last year, 2019, by Grove Press. About 384 pages, so around that 400 page mark. It's split into it is split into 4 movements, and it starts off, or Broom starts the book off by detailing her parents, grandparents, great-grandparents growing up in New Orleans. Very interesting history there. Then we learn that she's born shortly before her father died in 1980, leaving 12 children. We then learn about her upbringing in New Orleans East, which is quite a rough neighborhood. We learn about that, and as this is happening, there's a slow decline in the Yellow House. It's sort of decaying almost. Until then, when Cyclone Katrina hits, which hits the family incredibly hard, and then it's a process of re-establishing themselves and moving on. So that's a broad take on the book. But I did find some real interesting points to pull out for you. Most notably was finding out a bit more about New Orleans East. Now, quite acceptably, I didn't know anything about New Orleans East, and this is the point that Broom was trying to make. It is not well known, this area. It's not on the tourist map. Tourists don't go there. And she talks us through the layout of its streets. She describes who lives where. We also hear about the gangs that are there when she's got her childhood growing up, the crime rate, also the busy roads, and this underlying water that wants to pull everything almost down into the swamp. So we get a real insight into New Orleans East, which is really interesting. Another interesting part of the book, of course, was the first-hand accounts from her family members about Hurricane Katrina, especially her brother Carl. Now, Carl gives his account in the book, and I won't give too much away, but basically he goes to bed, he's woken up by his dogs as the water's rising, and he escapes to the attic of the house, and as the water keeps on rising, He's forced to use an axe to cut out through the roof so he can escape on top. And then there's this stories of how there's other people in his neighbourhood who have done exactly the same thing, and they're up on their roofs and they're talking across this putrid water while they're waiting to be rescued, and they're up there for days and days. So just incredibly interesting to find out about her family's experience with the hurricane. A third interesting thing that I totally wasn't expecting was Broom's trip to work in Burundi in landlocked Africa. And she takes a job with a radio station there whose mission their aim is to report on the country's corruption and human rights abuse. And through this explanation, we learn a lot about Burundi and their people and their struggle for peace. So completely wasn't expecting that in this book, but really a great, interesting discovery. We're going to move on now to the third section of the show, which is my favourite, and that is what we can learn from great life story writers, obviously like Broom is. The first point I really want to stress is that she is a wonderful example of persistence in her writing. She mentions in the book that she was signed to write the book in 2005 and it came out in 2019. So that's quite a bit of time, and to her credit, look, there was a lot going on in her life and she almost was living the story to write the story during those years. But I think it's really important to realise that, look, it does take quite a bit of time sometimes to wrangle a story and get it into a first or final draft on the page. And that is completely okay. Show yourself some grace. Don't beat yourself up about how long this takes. Obviously, as in Broom's account, it can take a really long time. It is okay. That is completely fine. The second point I wanted to bring up was how Broom has tackled this complex story. She's split it up into 4 parts. And these are always core, almost like standalone sections, core sections to the book. And these include sort of her family history at the beginning, then there's more a memoir of her growing up, a whole part on Katrina and the implications of that, the first-hand accounts, and then there's this final section which is this journalistic inquiry. She's a trained journalist, so we've got that at the end, and this is where she's really skillful in that she ties that all together. So really masterful way of getting the story to be one as a whole. So I highly recommend you look at her 4 parts. The final thing I thought was really good to mention for life story writers as a teaching point was how she's always keeping her reader in mind. She's keeping her reader front and centre the whole time. Mainly we know that because she's writing an engaging story. She's not being self-indulgent and going off in massive tangents. She's always tying it back in to things that keep the reader motivated, engaged the whole way through. In fact, she actually references the reader a few subtle places throughout the book, and I thought that was really interesting because it's almost like she's intimately talking to you, and I thought that was really, really great. She does a terrific job of keeping her audience, her reader in mind. So there you have it, everyone. That's a quick and easy review of Grove Press's The Yellow House, which is set in New Orleans East. To recap, we've talked a little bit about what the book's about, some interesting points as a reader and some interesting points to take away as life story writers. If you'd like to know more, then head over to my website at foreveryoungautobiographies.com/Sarah M. Broom. I've got an in-depth review about all I've mentioned, plus some links as well. And my aim from all of this is that you will follow Broom's lead to take that first step to start writing your own family stories. While you're at the website or while you're here, please leave me a comment. What did you think of this book review? Have you got a book you're reading that you'd like to recommend? Please drop me a line. Leave a comment or go to foreveryoungautobiographies.com/contact. In fact, email me about anything to do with life writing at info@foreveryoungautobiographies.com. So I mentioned today's show is sponsored by the Your Family Story system, which is everything you need to know about writing a loved one's life story. This is the system I use to help my 100-year-old grandmother write her autobiography, and I spell it out in 4 parts, step by step, so that you can do the same. Depending on when you're tuning into the show, I have a special Black Friday deal happening for you at the moment for the Your Family Story system. There's 50% off, and you can get a free coaching call with me to help you get started. Continue that momentum and see the project finished. If you've missed that deal or you're tuning in later, I have some free sections to the Your Family Stories system as well. You can get the deal at foreveryoungautobiographies.com/deal and the free sections at foreveryoungautobiographies.com/free. Highly recommend that you check both of those out. It's just as simple as putting in your email and hitting OK. I will be back again really soon with another topic. We're coming to the end of the year, so I don't want you to miss the last few shows I have planned for you. So please follow, subscribe, like the show, recommend it to a friend, and also if you're on Facebook, I'm over there as well. So until then, everybody, happy writing and happy reading.